All right. Howdy, everybody. Wanted to return and continue what we've been doing the last couple days and of dad advice and chit chat about things we'd like to chit chat about. And as always, it's free advice, and you should take it all with a grain of salt. And in general, with advice, my best advice is don't just listen to anybody, but make up your own mind. So that's the first piece of advice. But gather information from a lot of people so you can make the best decision for yourself as possible. So let's see what we got here. I guess we can wait for some questions. I didn't get a chance to pull up what we talked about yesterday, and I know I missed a couple, but it's nice to be back with you all again today. So while we're waiting for questions, I end the discussion the last couple days with a couple of things, and maybe I'll explain why I say what I say. What I said was that you're beautiful, and that you're whole, and that you can do anything that you want. So why don't I just speak until we have some questions here about why I believe all three of those to be true about you. And about me. And the first one is beautiful. We're all beautiful people, right? Deep down, we're all people with heart, and that's where the beauty comes from, right? So we all look different, and we all have, there's a social norm of what, beauty may be, but true beauty comes from the heart. And that's why I know that I've really never met a person that's not a beautiful person. I've met people that aren't nice, right? But usually my approach with most people that aren't nice is that I personally believe, that they're hurting. Because if they weren't hurting, they'd probably be a nicer person. So, to some extent, it's all of our faults, right? Because we're all society, right? And so if we're not taking care of everybody in our society, there's no one to blame but ourselves. And that's my personal belief. And don't get me wrong, I get angry at people like the next guy does, but that is a core belief of mine in terms of why I think everybody's beautiful. Whole. What does it mean to be a whole person? So, I think that one thing that we sometimes tend to do is maybe focus on one aspect of ourselves, typically something that we might not like about ourselves very much. And I think that's, it's not true. Right. So we have to look at all of who we are, right? All aspects of ourselves. So I think it's always just important to remember that you're a whole person. So if there's a part of you that you perhaps, don't care that much about, well, don't focus on that. Look at the other 98%, which is awesome. And the last thing is that you can do anything you want. Now, you can't do anything you want, like a lot of things like that. But I do believe that in this world, you can choose the path you want your life to go, and through hard work, you can get there. And it's just a question of, do you want it badly enough? And again, you're going to kind of throw out, well, if I want to be a multi-billionaire, right, is that really real? First of all, maybe, right? The only person that's going to tell you that it's not possible is yourself, right? Because I don't know your future, and maybe that's something that's totally accomplishable. So, but I think we do ourselves a disservice when we think that there are things that we can't do. And rather approach everything in life as, I can do it, now let me figure out how to do it. So, let's see if we got any comments here. Doesn't look like it. Just make sure that this is, no comments. All right. Any questions? Questions that need dad advice today? How was your day? Does everyone have a good day? Ready for a nice weekend? I hope so. My day was really nice. It's quiet. I think one thing that I've appreciated about the, last couple months is how quiet it is. And it's the first time in my life that life has ever been this quiet. And, I know there's a lot of hardship out there for all of us. But I think taking an opportunity to touch that quietness for yourself, can be, one positive that you can take. Because there is no such thing as something that's all bad, just like there's no such thing as anything really that's all good in our life, at least. And so really having that understanding and that focus of, what's good about what's going on right now. And I think there's actually, we could talk about a lot of the stuff that's good that's going on right now. But, the quietness in the world is something that I've never seen before. And, allows us to slow down a little bit and really appreciate, nature and the world that we're in. All right, we've got a question here. What would you say are your favorite drinks? Well, I'd like to make it like an advice question. I see ASFATL. I think it depends on the day. Right now I'm rocking some seltzer water with lemon. But I enjoy the collection of bourbon. I think it's a pretty drink, and it's, a drink I enjoy as well. So I would say right now, either bourbon or seltzer water. What else we got? Let's keep talking. Okay, let's throw some other things out and see which of them stick. So we talked about being a whole person, and we're talking about good and bad, right? Nothing ever being all good and nothing ever really being all bad. And I think that's a key thing to keep in mind, that something, right, that all these things that happen to us, they allow for different pathways. So first of all, when something bad happens that we think is bad, right, that's just an assumption we make. We never know what the outcome is. We don't know the future, right? So just understanding that it can go in any direction, right? And it might, something that we think could be bad really could be freeing and create opportunity for us for the next thing. So, but I don't have really, let me see, I'm going to see if I can pull up some questions from yesterday and just talk to those, because I don't have much to just kind of throw out there without, some real questions. So I'm going to do that real quick. Because I think there were some towards the end that I could talk to. Here we go. Should I leave my job? From Jamie Raven yesterday. So let's talk about when it's time to move on from a job. And I would say that, the first thing about leaving a job is you never leave a job until you have a new one lined up. It's rule number one. It doesn't matter how frustrating your environment is, how much you hate work. I can promise you that you'll hate not being employed and the anxiety around having to find your next job more once you actually get to that point, right? So the first advice I tell anybody is never quit until you know where you're landing. So then the question is just more like a practical question of, when should you leave? And I think that is kind of, there'll be natural, sometimes the environment, right, stinks. And frankly, one thing about work environments is you get to choose which one you want to be in typically. So if the one you are in doesn't fit you, find another. Check it out. See what it's like. Typically it works manager down, I find. So if the manager's cool, the environment's going to be cool. If the manager sucks, the environment's going to kind of suck. So, get a real good feel for that. And just understand that even the same company, a different manager could be a totally different experience. So that's one thing. The other opportunity is just to leave for more money. A lot of times I found that it's harder to get a company to give you a raise. It's easier just to move on to the next job and take the raise. And sometimes, depending, you can go and have a conversation around money and say, hey, look, not really making enough. I'd like to be making more. Well, what can you do about it? Not threatening. You don't want to put any threat out there, because that won't bode well for you. But just to say, I think I've looked around, and things in my position typically would pay X. What can you do to help me get there? And then you also see what they say, right? If they are kind of like, hey, we can't help you, or they're dragging you along, then you know you're not being respected and it's time to move on, because at the end of the day, you have to do what's right for you. Let's see what else we got here. What do you do when you want to buy some kayaks, but your wife isn't on board? So, I can make that more abstract, right? What do you do when, in a relationship and you want something that I assume costs money? I don't think it's like she doesn't want to have kayaks around, but she doesn't feel like this is a good use of funds. The first thing I would say is, hey, can one of you buy can you get one kayak and be happy, right? Instead of buying, kayaks, can you split the baby? Can you find a compromise? It's always about trying to find compromise in a relationship where, you get pretty much what you want and the other person gets pretty much what they want. That's the hope, right? So, that would be the first ideas, right? So, take the idea of what you want and break it in half. But I do think, finances is a big part of a relationship, right? That's a big thing that couples fight over. And it's really about everybody having their own budget that they get to choose how they spend. I think that's kind of the healthy way to do it. It's like she can have her, whatever number of dollars that she wants, and you have whatever you want, and then you get to spend it on a kayak if you want, and she can spend it on, whatever floats her boat. I guess quite literally. There's my dad pun for the afternoon. But that's how I'd approach it. I think the best way to do it is just kind of say, look, why don't we both have a budget that has a little bit of money for each of us, and then we can get what makes us happy, because we both have to be fulfilled. And I think everybody recognizes that. How do I process anger when it's justified but can do nothing to get justice? So anger, we can talk about anger a little bit. I was reading about anger actually a couple days ago, and this person was throwing out there that anger basically has an underlying, what's the cause of anger is hurt, is underlying hurt. And then so basically it goes hurt, then you get anger, and you get rage. That was kind of his breakdown of things, and I thought that was an interesting idea. So to process anger, which was your question, and this is kind of why I brought in what he said, because I think this kind of speaks to it, is that if you want to process anger, you have to feel the hurt, right? And you have to feel it internally. So you have to allow yourself to feel hurt, which probably means, and a lot of times, it could be some crying that you got to go through, but you have to really feel the hurt in a real way. And when you do that, what you'll find is that some of the anger will dissipate. I'll just kind of, right? So it's really that unacknowledged hurt that makes us feel angry. And then, that would be the best advice I have. I think it seems like it would be an effective tool, from my own experience. So cool. So what else I got here? Advice for saving money for my daughter's college fund. And please, if you have questions, put them in here and we'll get to them one by one here. So look, I think that the sooner you can save, the better you'll be. I think that's the key to saving. So with the college fund, you got an 18-year time horizon, right, from when the baby's born. And if you can get the money in sooner, you get the power of compounding interest working for you. So for any savings, that's got to be the goal, is you got to put the money in as soon as you can. So make the sacrifice earlier so you don't have to make the sacrifice later, because the income will keep growing. So, so that would be my advice. My best advice would be, like everything, you have to budget for it, right? So if it's important for you, you got to put in a budget, because, right, they say what gets counted, gets paid attention to, right? So if you don't really count things, then you're going to lose track of it and it's not going to happen. So you have to be able to say, hey, look, our budget says that 5% of our money is going to the college fund. And then that's where it goes. and make sure, obviously, that in every budget you have a fun part of your budget and all that. But I think that's just the way to do it. You budget, start when they're really young. Maybe even ask parents if they're willing to put some money into a 529 plan. And that's the other thing. I mean, just kind of goes without saying, is that saying that you want to put your money into a 529 plan. So it grows tax free, right? And then there's no taxes, and that means that's a significant chunk of change over time, because all those all that growth isn't getting taxed, and so it just really helps snowball the savings. All right, so what else we got here? Should I invest in Bitcoin? Especially during these times. Look, I had a Bitcoin mining server back in 2010, 2008 to 2010, somewhere in there, which unfortunately I couldn't find the hard drive. I looked for it and it's lost. So I've known Bitcoin for a while, and the reason it's lost is just because there was no value back in 2008 or 2009 when I was installed the mining software and started mining. So here's my take on it. Is that I think it's speculative, if I'm honest. And I know there's a lot of people that really do believe in it, and perhaps that will be enough to keep some real value. It does seem to be, at a new stage, right? That it's no longer like a couple years ago. It was almost like one of those things where it's just everybody's kind of getting on the bandwagon, and it doesn't feel like that anymore. But I still think that from a growth perspective, I think we can assume it's going to be similar to gold. And I don't think, commodities are a good major investment. You could have it as a 2 or 3% part of a portfolio. But, I think that, it's not going to have the same growth. If you look at gold, I read the other day, actually an interesting thing. It's that an ounce of gold is like the cost of a custom suit, right? So if you go back, and you had an ounce of gold 60 years ago, you could buy a custom suit. So there's not a lot of growth in these commodities. And, I do believe that all investment has to be long-term. And so the question is, long-term, what really will be a successful investment? And time after time, just the general U.S. stock market has done well. So, that would be the place where I'd be really putting my investments. Right now it's a little bit scary to do that, right? You might want to slowly get into the market, not throw it all in at one time, just because I think we're in a scary environment economically, and I think the stock market makes no sense right now. But the fact is that over time, if you have a 20-year time horizon, it doesn't really matter if tomorrow it drops, 50%, 60%, because it'll be back up in a couple of years at the most. So yeah, but that would be my perspective, that, it's somewhat speculative, and, from a Bitcoin perspective, back to that. And, there's probably better investments, if it's a straight investment question. Let's see what else we got. All right, so that was from yesterday. So I guess we've knocked that out. Let's see what we have on today's chat here. Is this it? Let's see here. Oh, here we go. Yeah, this is today's questions. What do I think about Black Lives Matter? I think it's awesome that, they have the opportunity for a voice. I think that it's sad. I take a step back. I think it's sad that we live in a society where someone needs to have a voice around that. That would be my initial thought. And I think we should support minorities, no matter what kind of minority it is, right? So I think that's is a society, right? It's kind of rolling dice, right? We don't the way what we're born as, right? And that can be skin color, it can be disability, it can be a lot of different things. That I think we have a responsibility as a society to support everybody because it could have easily have been us. So that would be my my general perspective, and that I think we should support minorities' success. It's kind of that simple. But overall, it just makes me a little sad, if I'm honest, that we're all so fickle and also so mean. Yeah. And that's not just, that's internationally, right? If, there's a different, similar issue going on in a different country, because some of this is just human nature. But it does give me hope that we see positive change sometimes, and that overall, over time, it can snowball, and society is getting better and better and better as time progresses. Do you invest in stocks? How do you learn good investing practices? So yes, I do invest in stocks. I read a lot. So my good investing practices, I read a lot in terms of books. I don't like a lot of stuff you see on the internet. I think you got to really read books on topics, and that would be the place I would start. There are 3 or 4 probably fundamental investing books that can really give you a perspective on, what an investment is, what a stock is, and what its role is. But the main thing is to save. You just have to save, put it aside. Index funds to me are the play. That's what I do. And personally, I was talking to my son the other day about, the speculative nature of individual stocks. And I can tell you, we all think we're smarter. There's actually a term for it. I don't remember exactly what it is, but, we all think we're smarter than average, but in fact, we're all average, right? A professor once told me, a finance professor once told me, when you're in, you're in, and when you're out, around finance. And the problem is that becomes this herd mentality around stocks, individual stocks, right? So, someone says it's a good stock, and the next person hears it's a good stock, and then all of a sudden you're hearing about it from different places, and everybody's investing in it, and then, right, it kind of bubbles up. I don't mean the word like it's a bubble, but stock prices rise, and then all of a sudden, one person says I'm going to get out, and then stock prices go down. The other thing with individual stocks is that you can lose all your money, right? So the problem is there's just not as well diversified as an index fund, where if one of the companies goes out of business, you still have 400 other companies that you have ownership in. So that would be my advice around really do index funds. If you want, you can do different index funds, but stay away from kind of trying to pick the winners, because you can just as easily pick the losers. And but the other thing I would say is do like a funny money kind of situation, right? And spend a couple years, because again, if you just do it over a year and the market's going up, you're going to have success, and you'll be like, oh, I got this. But the reality is that you haven't prepared for when the market tanks, right? So do over a couple years on one of these fake money places and play around and see how you really do. But do remember that, if you're just playing when the market's going up, everybody wins when the market's going up. The problem is what happens when the market goes down. California versus Texas for 25-year-old looking to start a family. I'm a software engineer. So I can't really advise on this one. I don't really know the markets, but I'll make it more abstract and talk a little bit about some of the things I think about looking at and making a decision like that. I think that, knowing what I know about these places, the cost of living, and I would say, salaries are the two things I'd be playing. I mean, both California and Texas are known, for having solid IT opportunities. but sometimes, so, and there's a couple things here. I would say number one, there's a weather piece to this. There's a where's your family piece to this. Texas and California. So if you're on the East Coast of California is really far. Texas to East Coast, or or if you're, so think about geographically where you want to be, from a family perspective. So yeah, these are the things that I think I would think about in this decision would be, thinking about geographically, where do you want to be? What's geographically appealing? I think about weather, and also kind of personalities, depending on the cities. Each city has kind of a personality and the kind of people you'll meet in that city, and having an understanding of that, because you want to be in a place that you can, make friends that are similar to you. Not just make friends, you can make friends anywhere, but, real friends. And then just keeping in mind that, the cost of living can be significantly different. So even if you're making a lot more money, maybe in California, depending where you are, if the cost of living, blows you out of the water and you're spending, even more on your apartment, then you come away net negative. So those are the things I would think about. Honestly, I can't give a specific advice there, but, and I'd also, depending where you are, I'd visit Texas in the summer, see what you think of it. All right. Let's see what else we got here. What's a good first car? That's cool. What's a good first car? Well, I would say, as a dad, I'd give a dad different advice than I'd give a kid. Right? The dad in me says, get an SUV, get something big. So if you have an accident because it's your first car, chances are you're a new driver, more likely to have an accident. I want you to live. So get something big, right? So that'd be my initial reaction, assuming, the problem is the bigger car you get, the more it costs, right? So, the first thing I always say is buy used, right? And I'd say, ideally buy something that's known for being a solid non-issue vehicle, right? And I don't know who they are right now. Toyota historically has been, and Honda and some of the Japanese car makers, and it sounds like maybe Kia and some of these other guys, from Korea are cool now too. But and I don't know who they are right now, but I would say kind of focus on spending as little as you can and getting as much as you can. And the way cars kind of work is that they'll depreciate, right? So it's a depreciating asset. So you want something that's probably around 6 or 7 years old, ideally, where most of the depreciation has happened. And but you still kind of get a solid car with modern technologies. So given that's kind of the play. And then ask the question: do you need a car before you buy it? Because cars come with unexpected expenses. And when you start adding in insurance and gas and repairs on the car and tires and brakes and all that kind of stuff, could be you could get by with Uber and save yourself a lot of money. So never just get a car just because it's the thing to do. Make sure it's really smart, for your individual lifestyle. Because when you start adding everything up, things end up becoming a lot more expensive than you think they are. It's a law of unintended consequences. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but the idea being that, anytime we do something else ends up happening, right? So, and I think that's always a good thing to keep in mind before you do anything, is like, just acknowledging that, and as you go through life, you'll see it more and more, that you think one thing's going to happen, but really 10 things happen because you made one change, right? So, so that's just law of unintended consequences. That's something my dad taught me. Life Pass. Hi, Dad. What's up? Hi, Life Pass. Let's see here. Dad, I knocked a girl up. Well, I'm happy to talk about that, but I'd have to talk, have more information on what we're talking about there. How do I stop smoking weed? Well, weed isn't particularly addictive. chances are, if you're addicted to weed, there's some aspect of anxiety. I would think that it's fulfilling. So I would say if you really do want to stop smoking weed, then you'd have to figure out what it's offering you and figure out a different way to get that stimulation, right? Or a lack of stimulation, or whatever you're looking for. Some, some ways to get that experience is just, some breath work, if you're familiar with that concept. If not, you can look into that a little bit. And where you're just, in a kind of mindfulness meditation and breath work. And frankly, maybe just some anxiety medicine. Now, of course, you're then, moving from one medicine to another, in a way, right? But it might not have, depending on your age, you might not have the same, brain issues if you're really a constant smoker. So that might be something to consider there. But, I would say that, if you can't just stop, you need to figure out what's the draw for you, right? Anything in life that we can't stop, right? If it's smoking, if it's, biting my nails, I bite my nails. Actually, recently I've been doing okay with it, but whatever it is, right? So there's different things we get addicted to that are soothing in some way for us. And if we want to stop doing it, we have to understand it's not enough just to stop. You have to really understand what's the underlying thing that's being served. So that's what I'd say. Take a little introspection time and think a little bit about that and see what you come up with. What is a minority? So a minority, and we were talking earlier about Black Lives Matter. A minority is any time, it's right? It means less, right? Less than, right? So if there's, 100 people and 10 people are, type B and 90 people are type A, then type B is the minority. So you can have a minority, in any country. Every country has minorities. That's the nature of groups of people, is that, there's a mass of people, and then there are the, people that don't have the same, numbers, basically. So anybody, basically can be a minority. So you can go to a different country, right? And, white's the minority. So it just depends, that's all we were talking about there. So, okay. Let's see what else I got here. Also vice like table vice or vice like drugs. I don't know what that is. Okay. Do you think I should paint my hair neon pink? Well, I don't know you. But I think that if you like neon pink hair, you should paint your hair neon pink. But I hope that, that's a decision you'd make for yourself. If the question is, how should I handle talking to my parents if I want to dye my hair neon pink? That's a different question. But in general, I believe we should be able to do what we want to our body, and way of expressing ourselves. I mean, I think that that's the kind of a given right, being that you're a person, right? From the fact that you're on this earth, you get to choose what your story is and how you want to express that. And not just that, by the way, everybody else in the world has that same opportunity, right? We forget about that, right? We want to have that for ourselves, but we're not always so keen about giving that to other people. And that's hypocritical, obviously, and unkind. So, I would say that if you want to do it, you should do it. And if it's a question of what will my parents say, that's perhaps a different question, which is, how to convince your parents that, to be cool with it, right? Because it would be a question of, hey, I'm trying not to make my parents angry. Like, how do I deal with that? But we could deal with that at a different time. Do I think Crocs should be worn with or without socks? I honestly don't think Crocs should be worn. It's, I guess that's the truth. Yeah. Sorry. What does this dad do for work? You know, and I was thinking, someone asked a question like this the other day. I'd rather not, you know, I'd rather make things a little bit broad. You know, I've had a lot of different, I'm an entrepreneur, so I've done a lot of different things, in my life. Currently I've found myself, in real estate for the last couple of years. All right. What advice would I give to a first-time father of a 5-month-old? First of all, I'd say congratulations. And I would say that you probably intuitively know what to do already. I think the only advice I can give anybody is to spend time with their kids. It's the most meaningful thing you can do, and it creates a relationship. And, you know, and also I would say that make sure you're not spending time, make sure that the relationship is straight with the kid and not somehow attached to your significant other. That's something I did notice that I did when I was younger, was that some of the relationships seemed to be vis-a-vis, you know, my wife at the time, as opposed to when I got divorced and I really had that one-on-one relationship. And I did notice there was a change there, which I wasn't even aware of when I was married. So that would be something that, you know, I guess people wouldn't think about, but really create the relationship, the heart relationship, you know, directly. And I don't know that I can explain that any better than that, to be honest, unfortunately. But it is a truth that I noticed. Yeah, but just enjoy the time. The other thing is just like really slow down, you know, don't take crazy amounts of pictures, just be present in the experience. Because it only happens once. And frankly, I've never gone back and looked at all of those pictures that I've taken. I mean, I have a couple that I've seen, but you know, I mean, just really, you just don't go back and do that. So don't waste the time taking picture after picture after picture. You know, take some pictures, love it, right? It's cool. Once a month, you know, that's enough, you know, twice a month, whatever, but not daily. It's just like, and you know, and just really enjoy the time, because it is a special time, and you'll never get that back. But frankly, you never get back any of the time in life, you know, no matter what age they're at. So, Champion in Hapika. Dad, you're hot. Thank you. I appreciate that. What's an index fund? What's an index fund? So, you know, let's come back. We can talk about more. I did a lot of finance stuff, and you know, earlier earlier here. Let's come back to that, depending on where it goes. But in its simplistic, you know, I'll just give the simple answer. A simple answer is an index fund is a group of stocks that you buy a little bit of each one, right? So let's say, you know, just a simple example, Coke, Xerox, you know, Microsoft, Amazon. Instead of buying one share of each company, you could buy one share of an index fund and own, you know, a fourth of each of those companies, a fourth of a share of each of those companies. It's not exactly what it is, but that gives the general perspective. What is the meaning of life? So I spend a lot of time thinking about the meaning of life. I like that question. I like the question a lot. See if I can remember what I found out about it when I spent time thinking about it. I think I decided that it was the question was not the right question to ask. Because I spent a lot of time in my life trying to figure out the meaning of life. And what I figured out, this is what I figured out, was that wasn't a fair question. And I'll give you an example. What's the meaning of your dog? What's the meaning of your dog? So, and you're thinking to yourself, what do you mean? There's no meaning to my dog. My dog just exists. And so what I realized is that we just exist. And what I further realized was that the fact that we ask the question of what's the meaning of life means that we don't really feel that we exist. Right? So now this is very like kind of woo-woo-y kind of stuff, right? What do you mean we don't feel that we exist? Well, in some ways, we don't fully feel grounded in this world. And I think that's what happens when we've been pushed in a direction by society that doesn't necessarily match us. So what happens, I think, is that, society kind of molds us to be this kind of person, but really we're that kind of person. And in a way, we almost feel like we don't exist. Now, we all know we exist, right? We know it, but at the same time, I think there's a little bit of being unsure. And so what happens is that over time, if you can get in alignment with yourself, and really feel your existence, then the question of what's the meaning of life doesn't matter anymore, because you just exist. So the question dissipates. So that's probably more than you expected. That's actually kind of like an original thought of mine of, but I found it to be true, and hopefully, you can, I'm actually kind of proud of that idea. All right. Be proud of your things in life. Be proud of your things in life. Be proud of yourself. All right. We got about 3 minutes left to see what else we got here. Is meeting women online viable? Absolutely. Absolutely. And we can just ask the question broadly, right? Are meeting people online viable? I spent a lot of time dating online and had a lot of success from it. So, if waffle 6, if you want to tweak the question a little bit, I'm not really sure. But I think it's a great way to meet people. Because you can maybe, sort through and find someone who's a better fit than who might just happen to bump in, you might just happen to bump into in daily life. I have a 3-year-old. Advice. Advice for a 3-year-old. That's hard for me just because I don't quite remember what age is what in terms of stages. I do remember that it was a cute age. 3's cute. 3's a fun age. You know what? My advice for anything is just enjoy the moment. Enjoy the time with them. We don't know how much time we have, and that's just my general advice. And no matter how old a kid is, be there for them. Talk to them like an adult almost. Expect responsibility from them, and they'll give you responsibility in return. Be kind to them and make them be kind to you, right? Because you're establishing the patterns that you'll have throughout the kid's childhood, and just really enjoy the moments because they pass really fast. I can tell you, 2 of my kids are now out the door. Third one's, she'll be out the door in a couple of years. She just started 9th grade. So, it really goes fast. It really goes fast. And, sometimes it goes a little slow when you're going through it, but once it's done, it's done. So enjoy the moment. And that's just in general life advice. Just enjoy whatever moment like you can, because we're always like looking, I find it funny. Well, I'll just talk about this then. I find it funny. I spend my whole life trying to kind of find happiness. And then, and again, that we can talk about what happiness really means, but sometimes it's just a question of like, can you taste the good stuff that you have in your life? Can you taste it? Like, can you take that, are you going to be stuck in your head? Or are you going to take a moment and really, be present in the good stuff that you have? And so, so we're chasing the next thing, chasing the next thing, whatever it might be, when we already have so much. So, it's just something to keep in mind. But look, I really appreciate everyone joining me today, as always. And, I get a lot out of it. And, thank you for that. And I'll see if I can, looks like tomorrow night, same time, 5 o'clock Eastern, I'll be here. But until then, I hope all of you realize that you're beautiful, you're whole, and you can do anything you want in the world. And if you've appreciated anything that you've heard today, please just say thank you, in the comments. That kind of inspires me to keep showing up. So I'd appreciate that. And I hope you all have a great weekend and a lot of fun. And stay safe out there. So cheers. Be well.